Welcome to the ITGA Late Night Lunchtime Talk Show. My name is Beth Bagwell, and I'm the Executive Director of ITGA. We are delighted to have people joining us from across the globe, which reflects the interest in today's topic of discussion, workforce development programs. Today, we are joined by experts in the field who will explore the significance of these programs and their impacts on students, local economies, and the wider community. Workforce development programs are initiatives designed to enhance skills and knowledge, bridging the gap between education and employment. They play a critical role in addressing local skills shortages, fostering economic growth, talent retention, and creating job opportunities. Throughout today's discussion, we will delve into two very specific examples of best practices. We'll hear how these programs can strengthen town-gown relationships through opportunities for collaboration, knowledge sharing, and community engagement. Our esteemed panelists bring expertise in workforce development, and we look forward to hearing their insights on these programs and how they empower individuals and contribute to the prosperity of their communities. So without further ado, let's take it away and meet our panelists.
Thank you so much, Beth. Good afternoon, everybody. When ITGA said we want to do these webinars, these panels, but we want them to be different, we said, what about a late night talk show? And we had this idea for like 11 p.m., everyone with a beverage of their choice, we'd log in, and then we realized you're all working professionals, and it's easier to fit these into your lunch than your late night. So this is the late night lunchtime talk show. So we want you to bring the same late night energy to your lunchtime. We've got great speakers today and great panelists. If this is your first time, the Q&A will be open. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can look for the Q&A, drop questions in there as you go. We like to keep these fun and dynamic, and we'll bring as many of the questions into this space as possible. We're also recording this so that it can live on the website afterwards. My name is Michael Aiken. I'm president of Link Strategic Partners. We're a social impact consulting firm. And I spent over a decade in higher education, leading government and community affairs for a school called George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And most importantly, I'm a proud ITGA board member. My co-host today is Mr. Woody Giles from DLR Group. Woody will introduce himself now and bring in our first panelist. We'll hear from the two panelists. We'll do some questions, and then we'll do a Q&A. Looking forward to today. Woody, take it away.
All right, good to see everyone. Again, I'm Woody Giles with DLR Group. We're a national planning and architecture firm, get to work on campuses across the country, including most recently Mojave Community College, where we're joined today by Dr. Stacy Klippenstein, who's the president of MCC, which is he'll talk a little bit more, but serves a large rural area of Northwest Arizona. So he's been there, I guess, 4 years at this point. And previously he was at Miles Community College in rural Montana. He's also served on the Small and Rural Community College Commission for the American Association of Community Colleges and the executive team for the Mountain States Association of Community Colleges. So I know he's very passionate about workforce development, and welcome to the talk show.
Great. Thank you very much, Woody and Michael and Beth. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. It's a late night show, and I'm up. I'm awake, and I'm ready to go. Actually, it's morning here in Arizona, where it's afternoon for a lot of you. But it is a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about workforce development. What I wanted to do is just kind of go over a little bit about and explain about Mojave Community College. Kind of where we're at, where we're located, give you context in regards to workforce development in a rural context. Talk a little bit about rural development in rural settings, but also then talk about our connections and our collaborations with local economic development folks and chamber folks. You know, that town and gown relationship that needs to be developed in relation to education as well as workforce expansion and needs. And then talk a little bit about some kind of highlighted programs, things that we have done that we have found to be somewhat successful in our infancy of really thinking through workforce development. And then maybe a lesson or two learned along the way for those who are out there, maybe working in rural settings, maybe working at a community college or university in a rural setting. What does that look like? And what could be some things that maybe I can share with you that might help down the line. So first off, I just wanted to say, Mojave Community College is in rural part of northwestern Arizona. We have 4 campus locations. So from Lake Havasu, many of you probably heard of Lake Havasu from the 1980s. You probably saw it on MTV during the spring break days. Lake Havasu is very well known from that regard. Then you go all the way up to our north, which is Colorado City. We have a campus there, which is right on the border of Utah. We cover about 13,000 square miles. We're the 5th largest county in the United States. If you want to picture it from this perspective, 13,000 square miles plus, Vermont is only 9,000 square miles. So our county is bigger than the state of Vermont. Plus, we have a big hole in the middle of it. It's called the Grand Canyon. If you haven't heard of the Grand Canyon, might want to Google it. But it's right in the middle of the Grand Canyon, or right in the middle of our county. We do border 3 states. So we're a bordering county, which we serve some rural areas of Eastern California, so Needles, California, or Laughlin, Nevada, which is the 3rd largest gambling community in the state of Nevada, borders the Colorado River. So we are right there with some of these neighboring towns, as well as up in Utah, Hurricane and Hillville, Utah. So we serve very rural communities, not just within Arizona, but also surrounding within 3 states. We have about 4,000 students. About 1,200 students are non-credit. And I'll get more into the non-credit side here in a minute. But about 4,000 for-credit students in degree, certificate, and programs. So we have diverse group too. We are 77% this fall, 77% are first gen. So picture that. Not very many colleges and universities in the nation see a 77% are first gen. Also a very low income area of Northwest Arizona. La Paz County and Mojave are 2 of counties that have the lowest income in the state of Arizona, as well as we are a designated Hispanic serving institution. So those are some diverse groups and what we call equity gap groups that we're trying to make sure we're maintaining with whatever programs and initiatives we do, trying to focus in on those 3 main areas. As far as workforce development in rural settings, Arizona, as you might know, is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. A lot of businesses are looking at relocating. Our Arizona Commerce Authority has been very, very busy over the last so many years, pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, all of those. The rural settings in Arizona are also seeing growth and industry growth. And so that's important, it's just as important as the urban areas like Maricopa County or Phoenix area or even Tucson. We are seeing more companies looking at coming into our area because we're so close to Vegas. We're on the new I-11 corridor that goes from Vegas all the way down to Mexico. So there's a lot of now of this look of Mojave County or Kingman, which is the hub of Mojave County. What are some industry growth there? So Kingman, Arizona has the largest or 2nd largest contiguous industrial park in the state of Arizona. Not a lot of people know that it has an airport there for air, as well as the rail runs right through it. So it's a prime spot for industry growth. Our companies coming in are not those 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 employee companies. There are the companies that are 100, 200, 300, or 400 type companies. The state recognizes the growth and the workforce needs, and they have an attainment goal of 60%, which means 60% of Arizonans should have some type of certificate, credential, or degree to help support this type of growth. If you look at it from this perspective, from a workforce growth, and this has been true for the last 60, 70 years of studies, is that when you talk about major industry growth, and that could be anything from manufacturing and to automotive to whatever else it may be, is that there's typically a ratio that you need to pay attention to. It's 7 to 2 to 1. And what that means is you need about 7 of the 10 workers need to have some sort of associate or certificate degree. 2 need to have a bachelor's degree, and 1 needs to have some type of professional degree. So in our world, in Arizona, and what we're trying to do as a community college, we know that we have a massive need to be able to produce and participate in that ratio. That means 7 out of 10 of the workers that are needed in the state of Arizona need to come through our doors at some point. And they're not just for credit style of programs, they're non-credit style of programs as well. So you might think traditionally of, I need that 2-year associate's degree and I'll get a job. I need that 1-year certificate in X in welding or whatever. But in actuality, a lot of companies are saying, and this is what we're experiencing in Arizona, is that we need maybe a different type of skill set. It's soft skills, but also hard skills. But those hard skills might only be a 2-year or excuse me, a 2-week or a 4-week or an 8-week style of credential? And can the college be able to produce more of those type of micro credentials that can be stacked into maybe a credit or stacked into a degree program at some point? But we're seeing much more growth in that demand and that need as industry grows. So when you talk about workforce and that relationship with the industry, that relationship with city and county governments who are looking, and economic development agencies are looking at bringing in these companies, we need to think outside the box of a traditional mold or a traditional way of producing certificates and degrees at the college. So that's been a major focus of us, and I'll explain that here in a minute. We have been really partnering with our economic development agencies, both the countywide economic development group as well as our local city economic development folks. Also, we really re-engaged our chambers, our Chamber of Commerce organizations. The leaders and the boards have been very, very active in the last 2 or 3 years of the work that we have been doing. Also, our city and our county governments have been incredibly supportive. And also we have state agencies that you need to connect to as well for us to be successful, such as Arizona at Work, which provides funding for individuals who want to come through both non-credit credentialing, but also to a 2-year degree. We also did a lot of labor market analyses through Lightcast. So yes, I'm here to promote Lightcast. Actually not here to promote Lightcast, formerly known as MZ, if you wanted to check that out, Economic Modeling Systems International. But Lightcast data really does produce a lot of great information for us in regards to labor market growth and trend analysis. And so when you combine those partnerships of economic development and chamber folks coming together and looking at the Lightcast data, that allowed us then to formulate multiple different types of listening sessions with industry leaders, both in healthcare, in manufacturing, in transportation, in construction, all the different type of sectors of business and industry sectors that are seeing the expansion in this area of Arizona. So we've done a lot of that type of work over the last 2 to 3 years. We also, through that, created an academic master plan. And from that academic master plan, we have 4 areas of focus, instructional areas. So career and technical, health, general ed and transfer, of course, and then our non-credit type area, so corporate and community education. So with that, we started to look at developing then new delivery systems of short-term type of programs, non-credit style of programs, 8-week to 4-week to 2-week. So we're really expanded that to meet those industry needs. And from that, we developed a lot of new partners. Down in Lake Havasu City government actually has 26 people going through a non-credit leadership excellence series. Cantex is another company in town that's doing the same thing with their leadership. Nucor is a steel manufacturing company based out of Kingman that actually has developed a partner with us on an industrial maintenance, but also electrician program, air control, heating and cooling. Of course, if you live in Arizona, you need plenty of heating and cooling. Carpentry as well. And our advanced manufacturing training center is being built out at the manufacturing or the industry or industrial park in Kingman. So we're right in the middle of that action. So from this work of understanding workforce needs, sitting down with those partners, and it's not just us, but it's industry partners, but with our chamber partners, economic development partners, we really started to discover what are those needs and how do we adapt our workforce development programs around that. Some lessons we have learned is that partnerships are a must. We cannot, in isolation as a community college or any university, any educational unit, do this work alone. We need to forge those type of partnerships and relationships and make them long-standing, long-lasting. It does take time, though. So patience is a virtue. We need to make sure that we take our time, understand it takes time to develop those and really understand what the needs are. You need to connect in with local governments as well as state governments, need to know the data. And then for us, what is the future? We're all talking AI, chat, GPT, VR, so virtual reality, and the use of augmented reality in all of our current technical and health programs. So what is that going to look like? And then how does that tie in with the industry where we're doing those type of skill training, and how does that really work in the career and technical areas? So those are just some kind of overarching things about how we have in Mojave Community College have developed these relationships and focused on workforce development. So Woody, I'll pass it back to you.
I'll pass it right back to Michael.
No, Michael, it's back to you.
That was a seamless transition. I love it, Mr. President. Thank you for that. I've heard some of this before, and I still took a page and a half of notes when you were talking. So much I want to dig into here. This is just fantastic. Let me remind all those who joined and who are watching that the Q&A is open. You can use the Q&A function, usually on the bottom bar of your Zoom. Feel free to send in thoughts and questions, and we'll bring those in. We thought today would be a really interesting deep dive into workforce development and looking at rural and urban models of that. So we've heard from Dr. Klipperstein, who mentioned the small hole called the Grand Canyon that's right in the middle of his district. I'm now going to go over to Patrick Guzman. Patrick is with the University of District of Columbia, and I'm so excited to bring their perspective into this discussion as well. Like we did with Mr. President, we will drop Patrick's full bio into the chat, but he's currently Deputy Chief of Staff at the University of the District of Columbia, reporting directly to the Chief of Staff and the President. He manages and advances lots of different portfolios at the university. The one that I'm really excited to talk about here is both the strategic planning process that Patrick's played a key role in, but also an initiative out of UDC called DAWN, which stands for Developing America's Workforce Nucleus. It's a workforce development and broader program that is really trying to enable UDC students to achieve their highest levels of human potential and empowering communities and individuals who strive for greater access to career advancement and workforce pipelines. And Dawn has a really specific focus on DC's Ward 8 Anacostia neighborhood. So Mr. Guzman, I appreciate you being here. I also know you have been on the road to recovery this week. So extra thanks for you mustering the energy to be part of our talk show today. Over to you, my friend.
My pleasure. Michael, thank you very much for that introduction. And I'm just going to touch a little bit on my bio. Michael did a very good job of situating me here at the university, but I just wanted to give everyone a feel for how I got to this position. So I grew up in a working class neighborhood just outside of New Orleans. I then attended the University of Notre Dame, attended Georgetown University Law School, and then decided that I wanted to have a career that was more of a odyssey and from the standpoint of going and experiencing different things before I landed ultimately here at the University of the District of Columbia. So I started off in a large law firm, then went to work for the Chrysler Corporation, and ultimately had the good fortune, and we had a discussion about this, of living in rural capitals. So I lived in Paris, just outside of Pretoria, South Africa, and also in Berlin, Germany. The common factor, and what then brings me into this discussion, is that in each of the roles that I had, whereas they weren't all classic workforce development, they all had workforce development themes, because I was always that person put in charge of internship programs or the mentorship programs. And I found it fascinating, particularly in the German context, when I was in Berlin and in South Africa, the Bruce Academy concept, in that young people of all talents, skills, abilities, intelligence, put through programs which for some would look more like classic workforce development programs. So now I want to talk about my university, the University of District of Columbia, and also to situate the discussion in context of Dr. Klippenstein in terms of the classic workforce development. So he talked about a lot of those classic workforce development themes. I instead want to talk about the themes of how do we get students actually prepared to go into those pipelines. We are geographically the opposites of Northern Arizona. The District of Columbia is 68 square miles. Population density, we have about 700,000 inhabitants. And in that context, the university serves basically two worlds, tale of two cities. You have on one side of a river, which is called the Anacostia, which I'll come back to. You have a population that is relatively wealthy. On the other side, you have a population that has some of the most horrific challenges. The university's aim is to serve all of the residents. Just a few fact-specific facts specific to the university. We are the only public institution of higher learning in the nation's capital. Michael attended one of those other private universities, but we're the public institution. We're the only exclusively urban land grant university in the country. And for those of you joining from overseas, the land grant program is one that was started by President Lincoln. It was so that students who wanted to pursue the more engineering, farm-related disciplines, that they would have a place in higher education. And the university has a good fortune of being this exclusively urban land grant university, and we even have a farm. And again, this will all tie together to what we're doing as well. We are also designated as a historically Black college and university, and serve not exclusively, but a large percentage of African-American students. We also have a growing Hispanic, Latino student population as well. In terms of our degree offerings, we are also unique in that the university has a four-year university with all the classic degrees that you would imagine: the engineering, the business, the College of Arts and Science, liberal arts degrees. But we also have a community college, which is not a separate institution, but which is part of the overall fabric of the university. And we have a workforce development and lifelong learning component. So we weave that all together to create an offering where residents of the District of Columbia can come in and have the ability to seamlessly go from workforce all the way, ultimately, if they wanted to either a doctoral degree or a law degree, we have as well. So in that context, what the university decided to do was to focus on helping those individuals who are, as I commented, east of the river in the more economically challenged area, and saying, what can we do to help those students connect to academic career pipelines, including workforce development. In making the selection of where we were going to do the work, it was decided that we would not look at areas where it would be easy to do. We would go for areas where it was the toughest to do the work. So as Michael mentioned, we developed an initiative called Developing America's Workforce Nucleus, or DAWN. And DAWN has three basic components. One is to look at how do we identify talent? So currently we have the SATs, ACTs, but there are other ways that you can define talent. So we are working with a data scientist to come up with more innovative ways, game-based ways of development. And that is something that we are percolating and hopefully will be launching in the next year. Next, we determined that teacher training was important, especially math teacher training. So that's a component of what we do. And then finally, we felt it was necessary to actually be in the school, in the high schools, middle schools, then down to the elementary schools, and not only helping to identify the talent, but promoting that talent, exposing that talent to various careers. And because the area that we're focusing on, Anacostia, is located on the Anacostia River, we decided to focus on more on the environmental factors. So what does this actually look like? It looks like providing knowledge about workforce development programs, college careers, through tours of the actual universities and such. It looks like providing urban infrastructure on the high school and the middle school campuses so the students can experiment with hydroponics systems, and we're building a greenhouse. It includes college and high school internships. And we're also going to be launching an early college and dual enrollment. But it also includes another factor. One of the things that the folks in the area said is that it's great that you focus on our young people and giving them a step up. But what about their parents? What about their caregivers? So we are doing a limited program to give free community college tuition to the parents and caregivers of students within the feeder pattern of what we're doing. I know we're gonna have time for Q&A, and I'm just mindful of the time, but I'll go back to something Dr. Klippenstein said about partnerships. What we found is what's important is building the relationships, but also having the partnerships that can provide credibility to the relationship. So whereas we are in a very tough area, we're surrounded by federal agencies, surrounded by district agencies, and they have all come to the party and are ready to support and help us grow this initiative. So I'm going to stop there just from the standpoint of making sure that we stay within the time frame. But that's just a broad overview. And again, the focus is on helping the talent that is in tougher neighborhoods understand and get connected to the educational and career pipelines.
Patrick, that was fantastic. And as a talk show host, I can say that. I have the microphone. Host. It's amazing to have panelists with such depth, but also that stay on time. That was really, really remarkable. And there's so much we can.
Oh, you went on to mute, Michael.
See, I was so excited. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? So excited about showing off my microphone that I unplugged it. I'm going to keep my day job, Beth. I want to absolutely come back to that multi-generational piece because I think that's such a unique and innovative part of this. So Poppy and Woody and I, and Poppy, if she wants to jump in, and Beth, are going to tag team some questions. And we've got some from those watching as well. So we'll bring all of these in. This next half hour of the talk show is really a dialogue, and we're looking forward to dialing in. There are a couple of things I heard, and this is the first time I've heard both of you talk about these issues, and I was struck by how many similarities they were, right? So we talked about the urban and the rural, but there were so many similarities to this. What I heard in both of what you talked about is the key of partnerships and really mutually beneficial partnerships. I heard the need for data to really make the case and focus the effort. I heard about the importance of tying the workforce development plans into the academic master plans or the strategic plans. And I heard about making sure they were forward-looking. So you're addressing today and the future. And I thought that was fascinating that those same key themes came through both of you. So kind of taking those in a little bit of order, can you talk a little bit about the role of partnerships? Dr. Klippenstein, you talked about the chambers as being a key partner, local state government. Patrick, you've talked about community stakeholders, corporate stakeholders. What I found in lots of my work with higher ed is often people will come in a spirit of partnership, and what they really would like is free space on campus or your name on something, right? So how have you put together this idea of partnership in a way that's not extractive, that's been really mutually beneficial, so you're bringing partners in that are a part of this? What's that looked like in your institutions? Dr. Klippenstein, can I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to answer that. It's so tough to follow Patrick with all that great stuff in the work that they're doing. And so impressed, as well as I think there's some really neat connections too with some other things we're doing that really does resonate and connect with what Patrick and they're doing. But the one thing that we notice is once you sit down with that partner and you take a look at, hey, here's the needs that you have. And they say, here's the needs we have. And there's a study out there that's called the DACM study. And probably some of the academics on the call or whatever else would understand this. I think it was developed out of Ohio State, or the Ohio State. I apologize for Ohio State people, the Ohio State. But the DACM study allows for that industry to sit down and say, let's go through every single skill that you might need. And then you overlap it with what's our current curriculum. And I bet you more times than not, you find a disconnect. And what we have been trying to do is say, if we sit down with new core steel, or we sit down with air control or progressive pipe, or Laren Enterprises that does a lot of welding, pipe welding. If we sit down with them and we cross over, where do we find those potential gaps? And then they might say from that is, it's not specifically this degree, whatever. It's I need this credential, this testing credential, whatever else it is, package that together. If we can do that for them, now they have more skilled workers. That's key to that conversation that makes it longstanding. It isn't just then Nucor wants a space on our campus. They just want us to do something by name only, right? It makes it much more healthier in the development stage. It makes our program development much more healthier. It's logical. And it also, from what I always determine, it has an ROI. The ROI isn't just a cash flow, right? The ROI is a skill development, talent development ROI within that. Once you have that, and I think that's what needs to happen more often, is that sit down and that conversation. So those partnerships that we try to develop with, like the chamber, with the economic development folks, and then looked at Lightcast data. So we have data, and then sitting down with those industry leaders and asking what they need, making sure we're cross-walking, cross-referencing our current curriculum, and where do we need to adjust, or where do we need new? And that's what came out of a lot of our conversations is, if we're going to develop this new non-credit type pathway to meet a certain leadership soft skill level of our city governments or our businesses are saying they need, well, how do we develop that? What is that curriculum? What should it look like? Same thing with anything in our health professions. If we need to do an offshoot, because what we're hearing from our radiologic technology experts within Mojave County are saying we need mammography. Yeah. We need more training in that area. Well, let's package that together the right way and put it. Well, we did that in a non-credit startup. Yeah. So we can mobilize and move it quickly, but it's because of those type of discussions. So it's being intentional with the discussions. Michael, I should have just said that to begin with. That would have shortened up the answer, but just be intentional with that.
And there's good examples in there. I'm going to bring Woody in next, but let me go to you, Patrick. What do you look for in a partner? What makes a good partner if someone's interested in supporting this?
So I want to tag off of what Stacy said as far as that intentionality, but it's intentionality, and it's also an undercurrent, what he said, which is the relationship building. So we have major partners like Pepco, and which is the local energy provider. And we have partners in the federal agencies who are in the environmental space. So the way that this has developed is that first we gave Pepco and also the agencies this general pitch. They then showed up. They developed a relationship with the young people, and it also inured to the benefit of our UDC students as well as the high school students, in that we gave the opportunity for our UDC students to show themselves, and then the partner said, that's the talent we want. And in fact, we want this particular young person. So by developing the relationship, and then the next stage of what happened was the partner said, what we're really interested in, for example, is sustainable energy. How can you help us find people more interested in sustainable energy? And that has started to develop. And then on the environmental side, it's okay. We see this talent. How can we focus? And I'm going to drop into the chat, or for the materials going out, an EPA video that was done with our students. Because otherwise, how can you develop the talent that the country needs in these spaces, both workforce development and college level careers, without getting the students interested? So I say it is using the true word partnership and getting to know your partner, and having your partner get to know you and the young people or not so young people that you're trying to serve.
That's great. I appreciate that. Woody, let me toss to you for the next question, then we'll go to the Q&A. Go for it.
Yeah, sounds great. Love hearing about all the partnerships. And I was interested, both of you are from public higher education institutions, and I know we have a lot of town people on the call today too, from the Town Gown Association. So I'm curious how you, with the different local government entities you interact with, demonstrate that what you're doing specifically with workforce is successful, both for local community members and local businesses.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to just start by saying that it actually comes both ways. It wasn't us and some of our initiatives going out. It was all of a sudden I had a city, well, when I first started, I think in the first 2 months, I had somebody from the city council and the government and the county economic development and also a state legislator get with me to say, you know what, have you thought about an advanced manufacturing training center? Well, voila, 4 years later, we're finally ready to start building, right? It took 4 years. When I said patience is a virtue, that's what I meant. But it's because they came to us because they saw a need, and I was new, so hey, they saw the newbie, and let's get after them. But it was being open and understanding that, and having an environment and a relationship, as Patrick said earlier. Those relationships are healthy. It makes it easy then for city government, economic development, chamber, county, state, as well as in any other folks, but it allows them easier to have that conversation. So there's that side of it, right? Because they see things and they hear things. And then it's us keeping those relationships positive when we're doing the data mining, when we're having the right conversations, bringing them involved. That conversation then is healthy. And then that allows us then to sit down with the individuals to say, this is what we're seeing next. So an example would be like the city of Bullhead City, with some connections there with their city folks about, and the mayor, about some specific workforce needs that they saw in the Bullhead area, which is also right across the river from Laughlin, Nevada. So looking at that, then having those conversations, and then connecting, having them help us connect with the right industry folks. So we get the leaders then in the room and everybody. That has really, I think, helped open up the door for the right conversations down in Bullhead City. Similarly, in Lake Havasu, Colorado City, as well as in Kingman. So it's understanding and having the doors open both ways. It was very critical for us.
So I'm going to just bridge off of that. We could not do the work that we're doing without the partnership with a fellow district agency. So the district agency is the Department of Energy and Environment, and they not only are side by side with us in all the activities we do, they've also been instrumental in bringing the community to the work we're doing. So I'll give you an example. This agency was looking for a place where to host an annual event, which is where all the people who are interested in greenhouses and gardening and everyone who thinks of themselves as having a green thumb. And they said, why not bring it to the area where we have this partnership? We can use this as a venue to demonstrate the power of what we're doing with the young people, have some of the key peoples on part panels, just show all the overall activity. So this event's called Rooting DC. They brought it there. It was a very successful event. Sometimes areas of town are areas where people won't go to for good or bad reasons. And this brought a large number of people into this space where we had the partnership. And it also connected with the theme, what we want to do, showing that these young people can be the future stewards of the environment. So we're very fortunate. And again, it's meeting your fellow government or community members where they have needs. Mm-hmm. And this worked out very well for us.
I love that. I'm going to start bringing in some of the questions from our audience members. And I love this first one. It's a nuts and bolts question, which is one of the things I think ITGA does so well, is we talk about the theory, but then we also get really practical. So this question from Sharon says, for both panelists, who manages the day-to-day relationships involved with partnerships, collaborations, and projects? I.e., where is this organized? What does it look like organizationally at your institution? Who'd like to start on that?
Yeah, I'll hit this. So I work in the Office of the President at the university, and we're organized in that I handle the larger corporate partnerships, as well as working with the federal agencies, and I have a counterpart with the district agencies. But then we have a phenomenal person who's our director of community to career partnerships. His name is Xavier Brown, and he is located actually at the high school. We have another gentleman who's located at the middle schools. and they handle the community relationships, working with the organizations that want to help in our urban gardens and such. And so it's a twofold thing where there's the sort of the hierarchy of the corporate and the federal agencies, and then we have on the boots on the ground, actually in the neighborhoods, and working with the young people. And again, I'll send this EPA video along, and you'll be able to see a little bit of the power of the grassroots. So I'll turn it back over to Stacy.
Yeah. When I first arrived, we started our strategic plan because it was at the very end. We worked with a company called Campus Works. They had folks come in. I started in summer of 2019. We get them on board in September, October of 2019. It was supposed to be about an 8-month type process to develop the strategic plan, which we did complete, but guess what happened in March of 2020? But we did everything virtually. We completed it. But really what came out of that was refocusing again on partnership development and working with workforce, developing workforce partnerships to address the needs. So there were certain strategies and there were certain objectives that were identified in our strategic plan. We did what we called a year zero of our plan. So we used it to structurally align ourselves to the 4 major key strategies, as well as the 21, I think, key objectives. Part of that was to redevelopment or rethinking what we do in this workforce and partnership development space. So we actually hired a dean of workforce and regional partnership development. How original, right? But it was to meet the needs that we were seeing. So we had a brand new role that came in that worked on the current technical side, helped expand our corporate ed and our career planning, our career ed side, as well as enhance our community ed lifelong learning side. So this person now has been in place for 2 years, and he's the one that's been going around really working with developing the relationships with the chambers, which he did an incredible job, with our economic development folks, with the state of Arizona, as well as Arizona at Work. So he is a key person in all this, but we also revamped his staff. So now we have associate deans that help oversee corporate ed. And therefore they are going out to try to find what industry needs. So it might be a training specific to a company. Hey, I need you to come in and do, I have 8 people need this. So it's specialized, redesigned, and designed specifically for them. Or we're hearing all this broad-based non-credit type needs, and that person can help develop that. So we really developed that structure around rethinking from our strategic plan. The other piece too is we took campus deans and retitled them Deans of Student and Community Engagement. So they are there for student development, student life, those student affairs style pieces of a college or university, but also because of their location, because I can't be everywhere, right? I wish I could. If you saw the movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton, you would probably understand what I'm talking about. The 4th copy would be horrible, by the way. But they are there in those campus locations and very involved. They're in service organizations. They're meeting with the city folks and so forth. So we redesigned it where they are much more engaged. So now we have multiple people who are trying to outreach and take Mojave Community College to the streets, but also then redevelop the relationships so they're coming on. So those are 2 key things.
I love that. And once again, the parallels are really striking. We at Link have had the real opportunity and pleasure of working with UDC over the last year on their strategic planning process. And though it needs formal board approval, the third of the 3 pillars in their strategic plan is called partnerships, right? Identity, experience, and partnerships. And I think rooting it in the strategic plan of the institution makes sure this is lasting, right? This becomes a foundational piece. So I love that being pulled out.
Yeah. Michael, before you move on, I want to sort of hone in on that dean of student and community engagement, and I'll just offer to you to take that back into the mix as far as whether or not community engagement should be added on to some as far as the strategic planning process. So I like that approach, Stacy.
Look at this. Within this talk show, we're taking ideas from one, dropping into another. I love it. This is good stuff. Woody, I know you got another question from the audience.
Yeah, great discussion. And another question from Benjamin on another hot topic. Dr. Klippenstein, you mentioned AI, which I know a lot of us are thinking about. And so the question was just about if you could expand on that a little bit in the context of your workforce development programs.
Yeah, it's in the infancy stage, like every college and university is dealing with AI and chat GPT, unless you're a major research company have been dealing with it, or major research university has been dealing with it for years. But there's two angles to this. So when you look at technology and use of, you have the whole virtual reality, augmented reality. That's where we've really tried to hone in on those specific areas to help us with training. So if I'm an HVAC student, I can easily put on goggles, and I have in the program, I have 20 different types of HVAC units, compressors sitting in front of me, that if I want to work on X, I can go, and it's all right there, right? To augmented reality with welding, we do a lot with augmented reality in that way. So it's a much easier way. I could take my phone and almost do my welding with the phone and the video, and you can then get readouts on how well you do. You've seen that with simulations, in healthcare, in heavy equipment operations, all of those things. So we're really trying to expand in that way with that use, because you can get much more done in that simulation with those than you can with just hands-on with one unit. And the AI, though, what we're working on is we developed, and we're just finalizing our policy and procedures related to it. But actually, our Dean of Workforce and Regional Partnership Development is a person bringing this forward, because we have businesses that are out there saying, well, how is AI going to impact me? And what is this chat GPT thing, and how does that work in my work environment? And so he actually took some time and got on chat GPT, and within an hour he redeveloped, using chat GPT, redeveloped our Leadership Excellence series. And he just kept asking it questions, narrowing it down. It spit out all PowerPoint presentations, all training materials within an hour, and how closely aligned with what we developed was pretty scary. There was a few things, but it was pretty scary. So what we're looking at doing is now our policy is having certain computers that will be set up, that will be off grid. So we can pull in AI and then start to utilize with our faculty and our staff, but mostly with our faculty, how to utilize that AI in experimentation. But it's not where we have security, right? We have security in place. Same thing with the chat GPT. How are we using that? And be able to expand training and take that training of how to use chat GPT in your working environment, and starting to do a review of training sessions for community businesses, industry folks, and so forth, and what that may look like. So it's small scale, it's in its infancy, but we think it's going to grow as we move forward.
I want to ask Mr. Guzman a question based on something he said in his presentation, and then we'll come back and grab another audience Q&A. Patrick, you talked right at the end there about multi-generational or kind of dual generation tracks and learnings. And I think that's such a unique concept and something we're hearing much more of. Could you just talk a little bit about how that is developed and kind of been received internally, and where the importance of that you think comes from?
Certainly. And this is something we are in the process of launching. We're putting together the brochure so we actually can disseminate this to these parents and caregivers. This is how this developed. So we developed a relationship with the high school, and we were experimenting with different concepts of how could we really get the high school students engaged and have them engaged for a long time. So we said, potentially, if you graduate from the university in 5 years or through a workforce development or community college, we'll give you a $10,000 sort of bonus so that you could start your life. And the principal of the high school came back to us and said, that's really great, but that's 5 years down the road, and we need to create something more tangible and more now. And that's when he suggested, is there any way that you can offer some community college tuition breaks? So it developed there. And I think this is going to expand, because we're also getting inquiries from, let's say, the janitorial staff or others saying, I really want to go back to university. And because we are such a accessible university, people can see themselves going back. And I think it is going to expand. And it is born of the concept that you can't view any workforce development or college student in isolation. You have to view whether or not it's their parent caregiver or those who are supporting around them. And I'm hoping that we can report some really great results back in about a year when we actually get people signed up.
I love that. And I love that you brought janitorial staff in. I'm the proud son of a mom who raised my sister and I largely by a 30-year career as a school janitor, cafeteria worker, and special needs bus monitor. She's an incredible lady, and I love those pathways that can come out of various examples of what workforce development can look like. Woody, back to you.
Sure. So an interesting question here from the audience about climate change and workforce development. The question is saying UDC has some intentionally established programs relating to climate change, both from an education learning aspect as well as promoting professional development relating to job opportunities. But curious how Mojave Community College is addressing that issue.
Yeah. Not as much as we would like, I'll be open and honest. However, there has been always good conversations, and there has been some approaches to Mojave Community College in areas related to water conservation. If you follow with what is going on in Arizona, especially this area, how do you use the Colorado River, who has access to that water when it's diminishing for ag use and so forth. So you get into those type of water conservation discussions, as well as what's been big is in the alternative energy resource, solar and wind. A lot more solar farms are popping up. So that training that centers around being able to provide that necessary skills for a set of workers to be able to come in and help set up those farms, monitor those farms once they're up, and so forth. So that's been where we've been. As far as specific into climate change and certain type of science programs specifically around that, not as much.
If you ever need some expertise, some partnership, we're here available. And I can say that these mini hydroponic systems indoor really create a lot of interest. So I throw the offer out there.
Yeah, what was nice about that is when I first arrived, I think it was in the first 6 months, there was a company out of Connecticut that was looking at doing hydroponics here in actually developing a plant because of I-40 and its access to I-11. Actually developing a plant outside of Kingman in the industrial area related to that and doing that. So we had good conversations with them, looked at various different curriculums that are out there, degree programs and pathways, but they didn't come out this way. But I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Beth, I'm hearing the budding of a Mojave UDC partnership here. That's what I'm hearing here. This is fantastic. So
yes, I am too. It's flowing. This
is
that too, wonderful. Beth? The synergy. Yes, I love it.
Beth, any questions from your perspective? No pressure. Just want to make sure we leave room if there's anything you want to dial in on.
Well, this is very much ad lib, but it's something I keep thinking about. Staycation. Keeping these students and the brain gain in communities is so huge.
Yeah.
Are you seeing trends where the students are staying in your communities, or they're staying in nearby communities? And how do you measure the effectiveness of all the different things that you're doing? I know that's a big question, but it's what I keep thinking about.
Great question. Either of you
Patrick,
like to
did you want to start?
Go ahead, Patrick.
So I will answer it briefly in that part of what we're seeing, and on a very small scale, is that because the programming that we're doing is having the students focus and see the beauty and the environment around them, there's more interest in them actually supporting and maybe doing careers. Like one switched from being a lawyer to wanting to be an environmental lawyer. So very small sample size. As far as the measurements, that's one of the things that we are looking to do with Link Strategic Partners is get a full list of KPIs. So we spent a lot of time building the relationships, building the partnerships, but now we need to be very focused on that. How do we show the results for the future? So that's one of the focuses that we're going to be doing in the next 2 to 3 months.
And I would echo and piggyback off what Patrick just said, we're in the midst of that too, as we have developed these MOUs with specific industry leaders. And okay, what kind of training are we going to do? Now we need to start assessing where those individuals are going. Are they staying with the company? I think one thing that really helps with that is if you develop apprenticeship style programs with those companies, so it ties in the hours that is needed within that apprenticeship model, but also the curriculum. We develop the curriculum, it ties in with the hours they need at work. So there's a combination. The studies show that those employees stay much longer. It's a better benefit for the employer as well. So it's those developments are key, but we're in the midst of trying to monitor that as well. But going back to the original part of the question, yes, in a community college, especially in our area, most of our graduates stay in our region. They come from our region, they stay in our region, which is phenomenal, because when you talk about the healthcare needs, and we have most of our graduates come from our health programs. But you talk about the healthcare needs of a large amount of snowbirds that come into Lake Havasu and Bullhead and Kingman. And so having our nursing students and our rad tech students, our dental hygiene, dental assisting, I know I'm missing some key ones, but when you take those, they are staying in this region. It's not like they're coming from thousands of miles away and then coming here and then going away. So they do stay in the region. And when I say the region, though, it's not maybe specific to Mojave County. It might be contiguous counties, but it also is serving, let's say up in Utah, St. George, Utah, where they have a major hospital. Most of the people who need care will go to St. George from Arizona in that sector. So we're supplying nursing students who are from Utah, who are staying in Utah, but they're coming to us because we have that nursing program, but they're staying and supporting that region. And we do have some data around that, and we do monitor that.
And that's got to be, your work has got to be so rewarding, and working with young people and molding their lives. And I know some are in mid-career. It's not always young people, but it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, with going to something Patrick said earlier, and I failed to mention this, is that, you know, we're really trying to expand our early start, our early college as well. We've always done very, very well. 20% of our enrollments are within dual enrollment within our local high schools. But our major focus the last 4 years, based on our strategic plan, we call it big. It's Bighorn Intrepid Goal, because we are the Bighorns. So, anyways, our Bighorn Intrepid Goal, or big Intrepid Goal, is all about adult students, because we have 42,000 roughly in Mojave County that have some college but no degree. And if you're talking that 60% attainment needed for the workforce growth, it can't come from high school students. The numbers aren't there. Even if you got 100% of the high school students to go on to a post-secondary, it won't fill that 60% need. So you need to re-engage the adult learners, the moms and dads, and so forth. So I love what Patrick said and the work that they're trying to do. That's an area we need to focus on. So when I see that 52-year-old walk across the stage at commencement with tears in their eyes, because they got that nursing degree and now they're going to be a nurse with their daughter at the hospital. It's those type of things that are just phenomenal.
I love that. And that's actually a really great place to start wrapping up this discussion. I know this hour went really quickly, but I'm going to recap a couple things that I heard, and then I'm going to ask both of our panelists to send us off with the best piece of advice, right? We'll log off from this Zoom. We'll go back to what I'm sure are super hectic days. And so what's that one piece you hope all of those watching and viewing us today are taking away from this discussion? So first, the recap. I heard three things. I heard that workforce development programs are essential, not optional. So if you position them as essential to the mission of the institution, they work best. I heard a lot about the intentionality of partnership and really sitting down and discovering what everyone needs around those partnerships. And then I heard about the absolute essential need to root these in both the academic mission and the strategic plans of the institutions. And I think those are some of the takeaways I have. Patrick, let me start with you. What's your best piece of advice for everyone watching here today?
So I dropped the link to the EPA video, and it is never forget the talent that is in our midst, because it then energizes you. You never forget, never give up in terms of trying to create the partnerships or anything else. It's just the talent that's there, that's being unrecognized, whether that's 52-year-old or it's the 18 or 16-year-old, it's the talent.
I love that.
Mr. And President? I would say ditto Ditto. But absolutely. And just going back to the three things you said, Michael, you hit it as perfectly as well. Those would be three bits of advice. Intentionality is key, essential. The workforce development is essential. So I appreciated you saying that because those were things that were in my mind.
Love that. Love that. So just on time, with huge thanks to my co-host Woody. Thank you, Woody. Thanks to Poppy for putting this all together. And thanks for Beth for the space. And I will throw this out here. ITGA has a great annual conference. This year it's hosted by the University of Maryland in June. Beth, I think it's June 5th through the 7th, if my memory serves correct. I think the discussion here is just the tip of the iceberg. So I know there would be a lot of excitement if we can continue this discussion around workforce. And if these two fine institutions might be interested, I think there's so much there. And for any of you watching, please mark your calendars for the University of Maryland. It's going to be a really, really good conference. Beth, would you like to give us a closing goodbye?
Thank you so much for everyone who joined us, and thank you to our very special guests. We appreciate it so much. We love the energy, and I particularly learned a lot of things. So we appreciate you and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.